Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. It's a little before 3 o'clock, and we are back with Michael O'Grady from Legislative Council to talk about H86, which is about an act relating to establishing the fluoride contamination reduction program at the Agency of Natural Resources. We have in front of us a fiscal note. On our committee page, we have H86 is introduced, the Committee on Environment report, and the Committee on Ways and Means report. And so, and then we have an amendment we'll talk about after all that. But so if you would orient us to which item, and maybe you want to share your screen, you should be looking at.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
I think
Is John?
I think this bill needs context for
Okay.
you to understand what it's doing and why.
Okay.
So states by the Federal Clean Water Act are required to have water quality standards. And they are required to go out, they test all year round, but every 3 years they report to EPA whether or not those waters are meeting water quality standards. And if they're not meeting water quality standards, the state has to identify why they are not and what is causing the water not to meet water quality standards. Fluoride is a pollutant that can cause impairment of a water. And when there's an impairment of a water, the state has a requirement under the Clean Water Act to come up with a plan to bring that water back into compliance. You all know what those plans are called, I think. Total maximum daily loads.
You know them as TMDL.
It's always somebody, isn't there? Okay.
So there has, over the past few years, 10 years, 15 years, there's been identification of chloride as a pollutant. There is one water in the state that has already developed the TMDL for chloride. There are, depending on how you look at the water segments that have been identified as impaired, there's between 4 and 9 waters that are impaired and that need a TMDL. And when you look at how to reduce chloride sources, Agency of Transportation already has a TS4 permit, already has measures to reduce salt application, already does a bunch of really innovative things like geofencing and GPS equipment in their trucks. And when you look at the TMDL that has been developed, the Sunnyside, Brook, and Colchester, it's not AOT, it's not municipal application that's causing the issues, it's private application. There are approximately 70% of the load of chloride in the Sunnyside Brook watershed. So something needs to be done to address private commercial application. And that's what this program does. It establishes a voluntary program at ANR where commercial salt applicators can be trained in ways to reduce their salt or salt alternatives while maintaining safety for travel portions of highways and sidewalks, and to incent the commercial salt applicator in participating in a voluntary program. Upon completion, they are certified, and that certification provides them with a limited liability protection from negligent suits based on snow or ice when the hazard is caused by them implementing the best management practices underneath the certification program. So voluntary program, but once you finish it, the salt applicator and the owner of the property where the salt application is done by a commercial certified applicator receives liability protection from standard negligence.
So it's a voluntary program. So if an applicator just chooses not to participate in the program, what if any additional liability would you have?
You don't have additional liability, you have the same liability. You just don't get liability protection.
So what would be the incentive for anybody to want to volunteer?
To get liability protection. Right, so right now, any commercial salt applicator, any property owner can be sued in negligence for harm that's caused by snow or ice. If you complete this program and you're certified, you can't be sued just on negligence. They have to show gross negligence or reckless disregard of the harm. So your certified applicators will have a higher standard than your non-certifieds. It will be easier to sue the non-certified commercial applicator.
Any knowledge at all of how many suits are, say on a yearly basis, being brought against applicators now? Is this a significant problem?
I did not hear any quantification of it. I just heard people say that there are suits that are brought.
And the Environment Committee did hear from it's voluntary, the private sector, who seemed to be nearly unanimous, if not unanimous, in being very interested in participating in the program. They liked it.
The commercial applicators
Right.
definitely are interested in it. This is not the first, it's not a first in the country program. New Hampshire is doing it. They call it the Green Snow Pro in New Hampshire, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Colorado. There are other variants of it in Illinois and Maryland. But it is, and it's being done in Canada as well. So this is not a new program. And it has been, it does have persons who are not supporters of the program. The Association for Justice / the trial attorneys basically say it removes a remedy for those persons who are harmed from snow or ice, but it doesn't prevent litigation because you have to show that they were a certified commercial applicator, they were following the BMPs, that the harm was caused solely by the hazard of snow and ice, and there wasn't some other hazard or other cause of injury. Then if the applicator can show that they're protected, then the plaintiff can try to show gross negligence or reckless disregard.
See, that's my concern because, it has requirements. This bill has a lot of requirements that these applicators would have to do reporting and all the things they're gonna do.
It's voluntary.
I know it's voluntary.
Nobody's making them do it.
Yeah. If it's a voluntary program, but if they choose to enter the program, then they have all these requirements that have to be met, right?
If they enter the program, they have to keep records, and those records are actually for their benefit because you have to keep them for 3 years. And does anybody know the importance of 3 years? It's the statute of limitation for torts claims. So if you keep those records for 3 years, then you will have them for the purposes of defending yourself against a tort claim. It looks like it's a mandate on them, but it's actually a benefit for the commercial applicator to have those records retained. And in other states, New Hampshire specifically, there is equipment that's available that does all this record keeping pretty electronically through an app or a computer program. There's GPS systems that tell when you enter the property that you're going to apply. It tells you what you're applying and what rate you are applying. It does a lot of the record keeping for you. With that said, not everybody's going to afford that equipment. And so the agency is directed as part of their best management practices to come up with a model reporting and record keeping and a form for that so that the person that doesn't have the fancy equipment can still do what's necessary to have records that show that they're meeting the best management practices that provide the liability protection.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, so going back to the context, this is in response to some waterways being damaged by calcium chloride, and so this is our response, the state's response to the federal need to clean up, or is this in combination preventative?
It's both. When you talk to A&R about what they're gonna do, how they're gonna meet the load reductions in the brook with the TMDL, they point to this program. When you ask A&R, how are you gonna prevent more waters from being fluoride contaminated, they point to this program. So it is both. It is both something that can be used as a tool in response to the impaired water. It can also be used as a tool to prevent more waters from going into impairment.
Do we know if a voluntary program is satisfactory to the federal regulations?
That is a great question. That has not been, so they have the TMDL, and the TMDL is your budget, but the TMDL isn't how you reach the budget. You have to have a plan approved by EPA called the implementation plan to meet your budget. And they have not approved an implementation plan for Sunnyside Brook yet.
As you might guess, I want these kind of environmental problems fixed, you know, where I come from.
Yeah.
My concern is that, well, there's no findings in this, and my concern is there are a lot of other sources of chloride besides this. And I've reviewed some of the documents from DEC, and I know they did studies on 4 watersheds down in Chittenden and trying to determine whether or not road salt was causing the problem. And we found that only like 20% of the load was coming from the roads at that one time. So
But from the roads, but it also says that the private is about 60 to 70, depending on the water.
60 to 70% of the
Yes.
problem.
So my question is, how would they have assessed that? Because with all the other potential sources, including, you know, potassium chloride coming from agricultural fields, because that's what they use for fertilizer, and other sources of, you know, weathering out of the rocks, the natural rocks. How was DEC able to do that? And if they had a findings section, then they might be able to have explained that to us.
I mean, that's a fair point. How they in Sunnyside determined it was almost 70%. I think they basically reversed out measuring the amount of chloride in the water, measuring, kind of determining how much AOT is applying, how much municipalities are applying, and then probably extrapolating from that, the private.
My overarching concern is that if we don't take the correct actions to deal with the EMDL problems, if we don't use effective treatments and actually treat the major sources, we're never going to achieve that TMDL, and we're going to potentially have severe repercussions from the federal government coming down the road.
I agree with that, but let's use Sunnyside as an example. It is a small brook in a relatively urban area with very little ag around and very few natural features, I would say. Although there is a pretty decent sized park in the area. The chloride most likely coming from runoff. And it's all kinds of chloride. It's not just calcium chloride. It's anything effectively that has chloride in it.
The chloride ionizes out from sodium, calcium, whatever it is. As soon as it gets to water, it ionizes out. It is, especially on those sandy soils along riverbanks, whatever, it percolates through very rapidly. And so it leaches very much so it can come from other sources and leach that way. So again, my concern is that DEC may not have done their homework as well as I'd like to see it done for us to implement something like this. And I very much would like to see something like this done. Just, I'd like to have it effective and make sure that it's not causing more harm.
But think about what the alternative is to a voluntary program. You would license commercial applicator. and you would require them to do training, you would require them to do record keeping and reporting, they'd be subject to enforcement. I mean,
I agree with all that, well and good, but if this is just DEC trying to say, and to point to something as an action that we've taken to try to meet our TMDL, and they're not doing the homework to get us to the point where we actually do something.
So that is the policy committee doing the research on this, and having people in it to testify. And policy committees here, I also would say that, as I've been told, that has the support of the Agency of Transportation, the Agency of Natural Resources. We do have somebody from the policy committee, Representative Chapin. Do you have anything you want to say? Introduce yourself and anything you want to say about what we're talking about?
I'm Ellen Chapin, representative from East Montpelier on the Environment Committee. I think you've got a good sense of the bill. I think the importance is that salt. We really heard very good science in our committee about the use of salt and how rapidly that has skyrocketed, particularly since the 70s, 80s, and how much the water quality impacts mirror the road salt usage and times when it's come down. And it was very convincing science in our committee showing that we are just on the path towards TMDLs all over the state. And so how are we going to try and address and prevent as many of those as possible? And we really also heard that New Hampshire's program, which this is modeled after, has been around for a decade. It's successful, and there's 1,600 private applicators, private salt applicators, if I'm correct, that are certified under the program, and that's what we're using as
And they're seeing results from doing this.
They're certainly seeing salt reduction results, which benefit the financial side of the businesses that are doing salt application, and seeing some success. It's going to take a long time to reduce the salt in our surface waters because of the longevity that salt stays in the soils and slowly leaches. So it's not as easy as we would like to say, oh, we did this year and next year this dropped, but they are seeing that pattern. It's just very delayed. But this is very much considered the only option, whether we do it in a required way, in a voluntary way, is really, and how whether we offer a carrot with the liability protection. Those are sort of the options that seems to be in front of us as a legislature. Not like, oh, there's this other source of salt, or this other way to reduce our salt usage. It's really figuring out the best management practices and how they implement them on roads, highways, bridges, sidewalks, driveways. We did add the education component into the bill to really try and help homeowners and people and landowners, mall owners and people who are making these decisions aware, so that they are understanding this from that perspective as well.
Okay,
And I'm
thank you.
happy to answer questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's continue with the bill.
okay. So there's a purpose of the bill. It is to establish accepted standards for application of salt and alternatives in an effective manner that provides safe conditions for pedestrians and motor vehicles, while we're also reducing the impacts on water quality. And it's the intent of the bill that a person's compliance with the standards established in the bill shall limit that person's liability and negligence lawsuits. You get the creation of the program in the Water Resources chapter of Title 10. Apply salt is very intuitive, except that it applies to both winter maintenance and summer dust control. It excludes application to transportation infrastructure construction projects like AOT projects. They already have salt management at those projects. They already have the TS4 permit. Commercial salt applicator is the person who, for compensation, applies salt. It does not include municipal or state employees. State employees are already under their TS4. Municipal are going to be addressed in a separate section of the bill. Master commercial applicator is an individual who employs other individuals who, for compensation, apply. And you will see that there will be an ability to train a master commercial salt applicator so they can train their employees. Salt is any kind of chloride, sodium chloride, calcium chloride, magnesium, or any other substance containing chloride used for de-icing, anti-icing, or dust control. Salt alternative is something that does not contain chloride, but is used for de-icing, anti-icing, or dust control. And then transportation infrastructure construction project. It's that project that involves the construction of roadways, parking lots, sidewalks, or other construction activities at transportation facilities or within transportation right of ways. Then you get the creation of the program A&R after consultation with AOT and other states with similar reduction programs shall establish a voluntary education, training, and certification program for commercial salt applicators regarding effective and efficient application of salt and salt alternatives to again provide safe conditions for pedestrians and motor vehicles, while also reducing the impacts of salt and salt alternatives on water quality. Part of the program, A&R by rule adopts best management practices for application of salt or salt alternatives by commercial applicators. The best management practices may be based on AOT's practices or other entities, but they shall do all of these things that are listed in subdivisions 1 through 7. They'll establish measures or techniques for efficient application so that the least amount of salt that maintains safe conditions will be used. They'll establish standards for when and how salt and salt alternatives will be used to prevent entering waters of the state. They will, including salt alternatives that are cost effective and less harmful while maintaining safe conditions, whether and how to implement equipment to calibrate, monitor, or meter application when sand is an appropriate alternative, especially in regard to when application of sand will be less harmful to water quality. They will establish the record-keeping requirements for the applicators, including records of training, dates of use, weather conditions, and any other factors the secretary deems necessary. They will create it and circulate a model form for record-keeping information. So if you don't have the fancy equipment, you'll have the form. Establish requirements for certification, including frequency of training and manner of training. Establish a testing requirement. Establish other requirements deemed necessary for the program. The program shall offer training, again, offer, it's voluntary for commercial applicators in the implementation of the BMPs. Upon completion of training, the applicator shall be designated a certified commercial salt applicator. The term of the certification is for 2 years. The business that employs multiple can have that master trained, and that master then trains the other employees. The certified commercial applicator submits an annual summary of total winter salt usage to get a baseline of how the state is doing. And A&R establishes methods to estimate and track the amount of salt applied by commercial applicators. Secretary may revoke a certification based on violation of the requirements of the subchapter or the provisions of certification. And then you can move into 1353. This is the limited liability. An A&R certified commercial salt applicator or the owner, occupant, or lessee of real property maintained by that A&R certified applicator shall not be liable for damages arising from hazards on real property owned, occupied, maintained, or operated by that person when the hazards are caused solely by snow or ice, and any failure or delay in removing or mitigating those hazards as a result of the applicator's implementation of the BMPs that they receive training in. That limitation on liability shall not apply when damages are due to gross negligence or reckless disregard of the hazard. Commercial applicator, certified commercial applicator also is presumed not to be violating 10 VSA 1263 and 1264. 1263 is the discharge permit requirement. 1264 is the stormwater runoff requirement. However, that presumption that they are not violating those two does not apply if there's a total to a requirement of a TMDL or to the requirement of the municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4 permit. So if you have a requirement under your TMDL or your MS4 and you're a commercial applicator, that controls over of the rebuttable presumption under your certification. In order to maintain the liability, you have to keep the records describing your road, parking lot, and property maintenance practices. They include the type and rate of application of salt or salt alternatives, dates of treatment, weather conditions, etc. They are retained by the applicator for a period of 3 years. We've already discussed that that is the statute of limitations for torts, so it's to the benefit of the applicator or the property owner to retain those records. Section 1354 is a requirement that A&R through the program conduct education and outreach first to the commercial applicators regarding the existence of the program and the training and liability protection offered under it, and then to members of the public who purchase salt or salt alternatives for use regarding the potential harm to water quality, pets, and wildlife from an excessive application and how to decrease that harm. Section 3 is a report. It is a report by A&R on how salt and sand storage facilities are operating. First, it inventories the facilities in the state used for storage of salt and sand mixtures or sand. These are going to be state and municipal facilities. It's not private facilities. They're going to estimate the number of facilities that are currently covered, estimate the number of facilities that are not covered and are within 100 yards of a surface water or drinking water source, estimate the number of facilities that are not covered and more than 100 yards from a surface water or drinking water source, an estimate of the total cost to cover or move facilities, including a proposed annual amount of funding that would be required to meet the timeline for cover or management.
I was just curious, you referenced sections 12, 63, and 64 earlier on. Just roughly what are them?
10 VSA 1263 is a requirement for discharge permits when you're basically responsible for the input of a pollutant or a waste into a water. 1264 is the requirement to get a stormwater permit when you have runoff from a certain amount of impervious surface. So if you're
So one is direct just discharge and the other's the 3 acre rules?
No, not just 3 acre, it's any operating stormwater permit. So if it basically, when you have impervious surface of, I'll just say an acre, at times it's a half acre, of an acre or more, and it's new or expanded, you have to get a permit for it, and you are responsible for management of it. So if you are doing this activity and you're, say, the owner of the property, you are not triggering any stormwater runoff requirements if you are applying according to your BMPs. Section 4, this relates to municipal salt applicators. So municipal salt applicators have the ability to choose to be trained by AOT under the Vermont Local Roads curriculum. This would direct A&R in collaboration with AOT to make changes to the voluntary Vermont Local Roads curriculum in order to include training for best management practices for spreading salt on roads, parking lots, and sidewalks. There's a definition of what a municipal salt applicator, who they are. They're applying for as an employee or agent of a town or a municipality. It does not include state employees. So currently, municipalities have sovereign immunity from tort liability, except you've waived that sovereign immunity for municipal employees. So a municipal employee can be sued, but the municipality can't. But the statutes that says a municipal employee can be sued says that the municipality has to support the municipal employee and provide representation for the municipal employee that's sued. So it's almost like sovereign immunity isn't in place for the municipality in full. So what this does on page 10, line 1, is it notwithstands 24 VSA 901A. That's where the municipal employee can be sued. So notwithstanding that, beginning July 1, 2027, a municipal employee shall not be subject to any civil liability for acts or omission the employee conducts as a municipal salt applicator if they completed the Vermont Local Roads curriculum, providing BMPs for applying salt or salt alternatives. The alleged damages are caused solely by hazards from snow or ice, and any failure or delay in removing or mitigating the hazards as a result of implementation of the BMPs under the local roads curriculum.
So this addresses the municipal employee liability and
Yes.
checks them the same way it does the.
So the commercial applicator, but because they're already in a program, there's already this program where municipal road persons are trained, that the training is provided through that program. It has a slightly stricter standard in that they have to be trained every 365 days, whereas the commercial applicator gets a 2-year term.
Yeah.
That's because the local roads curriculum is an annual thing.
Same, okay. Go ahead, Jim.
My impression is most of the opposition from this bill is from the League of Cities and Towns. Maybe not most, but there's certainly hallway conversations. The league has been opposed to this. And I get the sense it's on the liability issue. Can you enlighten me?
I was unaware that the league was opposed to this. I thought the league was appeased by the addition of the liability protection for municipal salt applicators.
So I wonder if they need updating. Because it's just, that sounds like this is addressing that issue. Ella, do you have anything to say about that?
I did talk with Ted Brady today in hopes that it was just a miscommunication. He was not aware that municipalities already received training under the local roads program, and that existing municipalities currently do seek out this training and take training on the BMPs. He is steadfast in that they have all along opposed this bill because they really want to see total liability protection for municipal entities.
They want total,
They want the same protection, not just for this salt application bill, but for all kinds of negligence.
that don't have anything to do with this bill.
Beyond this bill, and including this bill, they want to see, they have a very strong stance on wanting to see the same protections for municipal employees and municipalities from lawsuits that the state employees have.
That sounds like that's not this bill.
No,
think it's a bill-
but I didn't realize that the state has that protection.
Right.
They want the same at the
Right,
state.
but this wouldn't be the bill to do all state, all.
Right.
No, but.
So there's
That's what
the,
they want.
there's the State Tort Claims Act. Like historically, the sovereign is immune from tort claims, but states have waived that up to a certain amount of money because of the equity issue. And so Vermont, I think it's $250,000 that you can sue a state as the state employee for in tort claim. And that's what they want. Is it 500 now? Yeah. The last time I worked on it was 30 years ago.
So that goes way beyond the scope of this bill.
Yeah.
We're not doing it for this particular area either.
We're limiting their liability as it relates to,
No, but I think what I'm hearing Ella say is that the state has protection in this area. Forget about everything else.
Yeah.
The municipalities don't have that same protection. And they want
This
to.
would offer more protection than what exists currently for municipal employees, but it's not the same.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm not-
I think you could argue the reverse of that, right? So the State Tort Claims Act, any state employee can be sued for negligence. And there is no liability protection for them. They can be sued. Under this program, the municipal employee that goes through the voluntary local roads curriculum has a liability protection for 365 days from a negligence claim resulting from their application of salt or salt alternatives. So that's more protection than the state employee.
120% right. I'm here as a layperson. And I'm hearing the league that represents every one of our communities is opposed to this bill because of the liability language in it. And you're asking us, not you, Ella, is asking us to take a leap of faith in an area that should be resolved in the Judiciary Committee, hopefully in a bipartisan manner, to get at something that satisfies.
They're taking straw votes on the bill this afternoon. It has been in there. Many of the revisions that are in the bill came from the Judiciary Committee. I've spent more than a normal amount of time in there.
Okay, so what I'm also hearing is, without this bill, the municipal employees have no protection.
Exactly,
With this bill, they have a certain amount of protection.
if they are trained,
If
yes.
they are trained, they have a certain amount of protection. So that's where we stand with this. It is still not what the League of Cities and Towns, but it's something in between. And I also thought there was a bill on the wall in judiciary to deal with this as I'm getting nods. So there's a bill in judiciary to talk about municipal liability that it's like more universal, not just about one issue.
It is to go to the model of the State Tort Claims Act.
Okay.
To waive.
So that is the bill that's dealing with what the league says it wants. Do I have that right?
Yes,
Okay, I'm getting nods, all right. Okay, Wayne and Tim.
So intentions. I would presume this would give no protection to somebody that intentionally dumped a pile of salt someplace where it would directly erode into a.
that would be reckless disregard, yes. If you're not following this, you're not following the standards in that case, it's either gross negligence or reckless disregard. You're not going to get the protection.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the League of Cities and Towns, and I'm not understanding, this is a very particular activity, very particular situation, and it sounds like it's being used as a lever to get leverage for other protections that really are not germane to the purpose of this bill, and that are really a separate issue, as is, evident in the fact there's a bill in judiciary. So I just, I'm puzzled by why this is being opposed if it does offer more protection to municipal employees than they currently enjoy. I mean, anyway.
I
know, and you can't answer that question. We just want to make sure Ellen.
Yeah, I would just add, we did hear, I think municipalities have diverse opinions on this. Some are already getting the training for their employees with no liability protection. And many of them would continue to do the training under such a program and liability protection. And others might say, all that record keeping, and I don't want to go there. So it is a voluntary program for municipalities. And
That's right.
so I share puzzlement, but when I talked to Ted today, it's clear that they really just want that $500,000 cap. And so they have a firm position as.
That makes sense for that other bill that's in judiciary. It doesn't make sense to me.
We heard directly from municipalities that either are using this or have some questions and aren't sure if they would use it, but it's a voluntary.
It's voluntary for the municipalities too. When?
So just when we were just talking about, there are some that are already doing it, municipalities,
they're already doing the local roads
they're
curriculum.
doing this, okay.
And then the bill requires that the best management practices for salt application be built into the local road curriculum going forward.
That sounds to me like they don't want to use any more than they have to because it costs money to buy it.
They don't, I'm sorry, what?
They don't want to use any more salt than they need to because cost money to buy more and. they
Yes, I mean, that's one of the benefits.
Judiciously, but they're probably doing that now anyway, most likely. I mean, that's their intent. They got budgets,
Well,
but no, I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
So the ones that are doing it make a pretty decent case in court if they're ever sued. But they've done all the best practices or they're doing all of this stuff. They may have liability, but it's not. It's better prepared than if the town didn't do it. I have a sneaking suspicion that large towns do this and small towns don't.
But there are no best management practices right now. Other than what a property owner might require or what your road town foreman person has learned in like industry training. There's no state best management practice.
And that's for the state, the municipalities, commercial, everybody.
There's none that I know of, other than, there are industry guidance, there's industry guides, there's the equipment itself comes with guides. So.
sorry.
So does.
Otherwise, for you,
Northern
get back.
states that come up with the rules yet? Well, see, the other thing that really bothers me is sand. Now, as a fishery biologist, I spent a lot of time experience. And embedding of the gravel substrates with sand is a serious issue. Decreases the biota in those streams greatly and impacts embeds those gravels where trout spawning would be occurring, those sorts of things. And it's a big problem. And to address part of this, when salt is often mixed in with the sand.
Well, that's, I was just gonna
That's the
say, salt is often mixed in so that the sand doesn't harden.
At that part, then you go further and if we diminish the amount of salt and we use more sand, then there's no assessment of the environmental impacts of that. And that's a serious impact.
But that's what the BMPs are supposed to address, and that's a rulemaking process. You know how rulemaking goes. You've been through it many times. And it's a public participation process where all interested parties can provide their input, and the agency does revise its rules based on input. If they get scientific input based on the need to manage or limit where sand is used as opposed to salt and sand or salt, they can do that. And remember, they're supposed to recommend salt alternatives, those things that don't have fluoride in them, that are just as effective and less harmful to water quality.
And New Hampshire's been doing this for a while?
For 10 years. I believe, is that?
Yeah, over 10, I think, at this.
Over 10, okay.
Canada, Minnesota, Colorado.
Have any of them demonstrated improvement?
Well, that's a good question, and it's not a satisfying answer, because as Rep. Chapin noted earlier, you're not going to see a straight line reduction, because either the variability of winters or the variability of conditions, you're not going to see that straight line. It's kind of going to be like a jagged line going down. But the testimony from applicators in, I think it was New Hampshire, it's like they are using less salt because they are buying less salt.
That's it.
This started with providing us with the context for the amendment. Can we move to the amendment?
I just want to finish up the part that talks about the money so that we can talk about our amendment that's going away. Or do we have an amendment from Ways and Means as well?
I don't know if Erin has that amendment. Basically, all that amendment does is specifies that the General Assembly has to approve any fee that's going to be charged to an applicator in order to take the class.
There's a fee report.
Right, there's a fee report, and in that fee report, the
So let's
second,
go down to that. Let's go down to page 11, and section 5 and 6 was where we kind of get into the money pieces.
Right. So the program has the option of being run by the state or by a third party vendor. If there's insufficient interest from vendors as passed out by the Committee on Environment, the secretary submits to you a proposed fee for certification of commercial salt applicators. The Ways and Means Committee wanted it clear that if it's run by the state or if it's run by a vendor, that any fee charged to the commercial applicator is going to be approved by the General Assembly.
I'm just checking their amendment right here, yeah. Okay, then they did an up to, so that's,
Right, and
okay, so go.
in the appropriations in section 6, there's first the authorization of the classified position at A&R in FY 2026. Then there's 150,000 in FY 2026 for that position. And then in sub D, there's 250,000. It had said up to 250,000. That was probably me. And Ways and Means said take out the up to. They didn't think it was necessary. So the removal of the up to is part of the Ways and Means amendment. Your amendment would supersede that second part of the Ways and Means amendment because you're striking this section entirely.
Right, so this section, the authorized position of 150,000 plus 250 contract for the program.
Mhm.
So 400,000 is the appropriation.
And the position.
That's total, this one, yeah, so there's a position and an appropriation of 400,000. So that was how it came to us, and now we have an amendment. So why don't you walk us through the committee amendment?
Sure. So you should all have a paper copy in front of you. You will see in the lead in to the legislative text that that the report of the Committee on Environment be amended by striking out section 6, the authorized position and then the appropriation in its entirety and inserting in lieu thereof a new section 6 to read as follows. Contingency on funding. The duty of A&R to implement section 2, which is the program. 3, the report on management of salt and sand storage. 4, the municipal salt applicator program. And 5, the fee report is contingent upon an appropriation in fiscal year 2026 from the general fund for the specific purposes described in section 2.5.
Okay, Jim.
So a couple questions, and again, it may not be directed for you, Mike, maybe for Ellen. It's almost May. This is a House bill. There's no money in the budget currently, at least on the House version of the budget, nor the Senate version of the budget. Is this, I direct this to you, is this for expectation that the Senate takes it up, hopefully, in 2026? Or is this for a end of session agreement that the Senate takes it up and passes it quickly or puts it in the budget somehow?
Senate has been taking testimony all session already on the companion bill that's on the Senate side.
Okay.
They have been hearings, making testimony. A bill did pass out of Senate Natural Resources, and Judiciary has been working on the liability side on the Senate. And so I think they are expecting and preparing to receive a bill from us. And
Is there an agreement? Because it didn't obviously meet crossover.
I can't answer that question, because I'm not part of the leadership, but it is my understanding that it could pass out of the Senate this year or early next session, but that this is a priority, even though we know we're not going to appropriate money to it immediately because of the potential preventative nature of this related to TMDLs coming down the road, that as soon as the agency has the funding, they would like to move forward on the chloride reduction. So I think the sooner the better, but I can't guarantee you it's going to be on the side of this.
That's helpful.
Great.
Just the amendment's totally fine.
Yeah,
If we vote, I will vote no, but I I want to talk to a few people to get a little bit more educated on why there's some opposition to the
Yeah,
bill.
yeah.
So if we have to vote today, I will vote no on the
Yeah.
bill.
You can change your
I
vote on
can
the floor.
change my vote on the floor
Yeah.
if I get educated sufficiently.
Yeah.
But that's your
fine.
call.
Yeah, no, I've been asked to get it out today,
That's
so
fine.
we're gonna get it out today and understand that that's an issue.
Yeah.
But why don't we, so the amendment, perhaps we can all agree on, is simply moving the money out. So is there, so can we have a motion to support the committee amendment? Thank you, Dave. Any questions on stripping the money out? If not, Trevor, when you are ready,
I'm ready.
take the roll, please.
Representative Blumenle,
Yes.
Representative Dickinson,
Yes.
Representative Harrison,
No. Yes, I'm sorry, the amendment. I just contradicted what I said.
Maybe you're going the other way. No, and then yes.
is John with us?
He is not on, is he?
Okay.
Okay, I texted him, but he's not.
Okay, Representative LaRoche? Yes. Representative Wiki?
Yes.
Representative Micro?
Oh,
Representative Squirrel, yes. Representative Stephen?
Yes.
Representative Yakubov?
Yes.
Representative Shaw?
yes. And thank you, Aaron. I made this rather large error in not having James come up. Do you want to tell us about the positions that we just stripped out of the bill?
We took care of it.
I'd like, I give you a few seconds to.
You're fine.
We recommend James Duffy, doing the performance.
I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine with general, with representative council, I think, and Jane, the discussion is, the committee is covered for the municipal components of the bill. It's the fee report that will be filed by the Agency of Natural Resources. This prior to any fee going into effect, and the appropriation of the committee is voting to remove the bill. So happy to take any follow-up questions from the committee. I think the committee will be well covered.
Okay, I do apologize, James. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, and thank you for your brief but thorough explanation to me. All right, so so maybe, Mike, you can help us on this, on what we're now doing, which, yeah,
So you are going to vote to recommend approval of the Committee on Environment's report with the amendments from Ways and Means Committee and your committee.
Yeah, and environment had a strike also. Yeah.
Right.
So more
Further.
okay.
amended and
Yeah.
further.
As the further amended, okay. Trevor's got this down, so Dave has just moved that. Is there any further discussion at this point? We've discussed this,
I'd love to be able to support it.
and what do you need to support it, Wayne?
Well, first I'd like to have a discussion. I'll try to talk to DEC. I'd like to know if there's any nexus here between any upcoming TMDL and this move at this point in time, rather than being more comprehensive and thorough and having findings and maybe telling us how they're going to determine success and failure.
Yeah.
Maybe they could help me with that.
Okay.
But it
And
just,
that's definitely a policy committee kind of thing, which we try not to get into too much. I let you go a little longer than I normally would have today, but.
I thought TMDL was total manure dumped in the lake.
Total what?
Total manure dumped in the lake. That's what I thought.
Maybe in Franklin County.
Well, you guys are at the end of the line.
Yeah, manure. The issue is I'm gonna go and check with my town manager and find out their road crew and I have no idea where they stand.
Yeah.
I haven't really given it much thought beyond what we've done today, and I really want to check with them. So I'm not gonna support it till I get some kind of feedback from them.
Well, it'd be good, for you all to go get your feedback, so when this is on the floor, you will know where of you vote.
This would be up Friday, or let's just share it.
Yeah. All I know is today we're voting.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, so let us, we've moved, and I won't repeat it. Trevor's got it. The clerk is ready. Let's call the roll, please.
Representative Blumenle,
Yes.
Representative Dickinson,
No,
Representative Harrison,
No.
Representative Vicenko. Representative Roche, Representative Rowicki,
Yes.
Representative Nigro,
Yes.
Representative Squirrel, yes, Representative Stevens. Yes. Representative Yakubowski.
Yes.
And Representative Scott.
Yes,
So that's, second reading.
731, and I do hope all of you have said you want to find out more, that you will find out more. I'd be interested to hear you find out. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, James.
Michael, can you send me a copy of the?
Trevor's the reporter of the bill.
Send you a copy of
Yeah.
the amendment, sure.
Yeah, so we can get that out, and Nigel knows about it, so it'll get on the calendar. Ella, thank you very much for your participation and for being here for this. Appreciate it.
I'm also interested in this feedback from your town.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. Okay. Thank you. Again, James, I apologize. We'll get you in here twice as long on whatever your next one is. Okay?
What happened?
So, committee, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we are gonna take up S56. That's the act relating to the creating the Office of New Americans. It's a study that's coming here because it's per diems. It came out of House General unanimously. So, and the money's in the budget. So that's what I can tell you about it. Read it, so you know, what's happening.
And
And
Lynn, I think it's in your.
Wording.
In your budget.
Mike, wait, return. Lynn?
I think that the bill that Robin was just talking about is in your budget area. Because it's in the Department of Health and I think it's in the Secretary of Health. Yeah.
I remember seeing something about
Yeah.
that.
I don't think it's a terribly long bill, so it'll be easy to read, but it probably is gonna be yours, Liz. And then when we are done with that, they're off the floor in the Senate. Senate had second reading on the budget today. But Emily's coming in tomorrow morning at 9:30 or so, depending on how quickly we get through 56. And she's gonna tell us what the Senate did and what the changes are. And so they may change things at third reading, but we'll have most of it tomorrow. And the idea, we hope, is that we'll be able to call for a committee of conference on Friday. So I'll check in with the speaker on the timing because we normally vote and we usually vote to have a committee of conference. I can't imagine we won't do that again this time, but I'll ask her about the timing of that, whether it's before we get on the floor tomorrow or whatever it is. So, okay.
So we might do that on Friday.
Yeah,
When's the Senate? Meeting on Thursday.
isn't it also in the afternoon at 1? I could look at the General Assembly website and tell you. I'll race you to it. Thursday at 1.
Okay, so it's not likely they'll get messaging over.
They might.
Well, no, but
They can message
while
it.
we're still on the floor.
Oh,
No.
probably not. Unless we go really long. I don't know what they're working out at the above my pay grade part, but I'm thinking that the speaker may be creating if we vote in here to have a
Right.
committee conference, it'll be Friday morning.
Right. Yeah, we can't really do anything.
I don't know. That's gonna,
straw vote.
right, it may be, actually, it's always a straw vote because we don't,
It
and
is.
there
We
she
never have
is.
to
You're still alive, but you're still upright. They finished on the floor.
Yeah. It's on the third reading.
Okay, excellent. We're just talking about it now. And because we'll be hearing from you tomorrow morning.
Yes.
And they will have third reading, and then we're talking about when we're gonna vote in this committee room for the committee of conference, which we may be able to do Friday morning before the floor. If we won't ever have possession of the bill.
No.
So it'll be a straw vote, but what we would know, and so I'll check with the speaker later this afternoon when I see her and just see if we can actually vote on that tomorrow, whether it matters or not. I have no idea. Maybe it has to be in this body before we can do a straw vote, probably. So it'll either be tomorrow afternoon or more likely Friday morning before the final. That's my guess. Okay?
You say again what time Emily will be here tomorrow?
We think about 9:30.
Okay.
We have to vote the other bill out before then at 9.
Human
Turn around.
Services. I'd ask you to come and introduce that amendment that we just put on the
Who
chart.
wants,
Human Services. at night.
Oh, at 9:45?
I think it should take, or I could switch it.
Yeah, if there's a chance to do it later,
All right, let me.
I think you want to be here to hear
Yeah.
what's, I think you need to be here for that part. And you need to be here for the vote on the S-56, so.
And the,
Well, but he's not gonna take very long up in
I'm
the,
just kidding.
sorry. So I'm guessing, Emily, are you thinking an hour or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking if you could
That's
say
fine.
10:30, right, well, this committee, they never ask questions.
Sorry, I
We're
dug
gonna
in,
start giving you marbles, so you get this many.
sorry I dug in so deep on this, but then on
Yeah.
the other hand, I may have saved you some time on the floor.
We'll see, yeah, well, you can thank, yeah.
Okay, before you go.
We'll hold you to
Before we go
that.
up, yes.
I'll remind you that breaking news,
You put a little.
we got a new report.
Oh, have a new report.
Yes, and it's on the monthly housing reporting, I think, for
Oh,
the
yeah.
VA housing.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, there we
I will
go.
forward this on. to
Okay.
Dick.
Okay, and
But it's on our
Karen puts it on the
website.
website, okay.
Yeah, so everybody is
Okay.
welcome.
On their website, Kim?
It'll be on our website.
Website under reports.
Thank you.
Okay, so read S-56, we will convene at 9 AM tomorrow morning and we'll go up highway. Thank you.